Go.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Heathen Talk Season 2, episode whatever the hell number this is. I think
13. 13.
Close.
You missed 12. So.
I did miss 12. I am back this week, and I will be here next week. I am casting from my group's anniversary celebration.
I will not be here next week. I will be at Midwest Winter Moot, but we'll be doing some video from that.
That'll be exciting.
Yeah, that's good.
Y'all will probably notice that Thorin is not here. He will be. He's just doing life things, and sometimes life things get in the way of podcast things. So, Lauren, real quick, where can people find us, and what can they find on our website right now that normally isn't there?
Well, you can find us pretty much everywhere. I mean, we legitimately are kind of whores that way. We are on Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook. I mean, we're everywhere. We have our own subreddit now, but if you want to actually find us and find everything, go to our Facebook, or go to our website, heathentalk.com. If you click on links, you will find there is all of our links for our social media. You'll find links to our friends, such as Being a Better Man podcast with Alf, who's been on the show. And I'm going to tell you what that was. He did some pretty amazing, this week. Some pretty amazing stuff this week. And I was very impressed with it. You can also go and find, like I said, all of our stuff. You can find links to some places that we like, our projects. Pretty much everything is on our Facebook page. And another thing that you will be able to find on our Facebook page in about 2 weeks, which I think is what Josh was hinting at, is Yule Market. Our second annual Yule Market is going to be up. We already have 10 vendors. So these are heathens who own Etsy stores, crafts, shops, just pretty much anything that, kind of heathen related. And this is kind of one of our ways we give back to the community. We hold this marketplace every year, and we don't charge anybody for it, and we allow them to advertise their stuff, and they usually have a discount code for listeners, and you get a chance to buy cool stuff made by heathens and support, other heathens, and we get a chance to give back, and they get customers, so it works out for everyone. If you are interested in this, shoot us an email at yule@heathentalk.com, and that will go to me, and I will get you in the database, and that will go up on the 13th. That will go up on November 13th and stay up through January 1st.
Awesome.
We're trying to do it earlier this year so people can order stuff and get it in time.
Well, and we definitely want, people to support heathen craftsmen. I mean, we're a really small religious group, so the more we can support each other, the better off we will be.
And I'm super excited. It's like we just got 2 more in. So that's 2 more that I hadn't even seen yet. We've got some repeats from last year. Really excited to see our friend. We've got. It's and the quality of the products is just amazing. I'm really excited about it. But looking forward to it. Gonna have Sam up on the market as well. So he should have some interesting stuff for Yule as well. Some really cool art pieces that he's been putting up.
I'm super excited about it. I'm sure I'm going to get a couple of gifts for people this year from the marketplace. So
I've already found my gift for Ben on the marketplace and hadn't even opened yet.
Nicely done.
Yeah.
So, do we have any events coming up other than Midwest Winter
Moot? We actually don't. No one has sent any events. We hadn't had any submissions. So if you have upcoming events, please, please, please go on our website, click on events. It's a super simple little form you can fill out to let us know what you have going on, because we want to promote your event. I know we are kind of getting to the end of the event season, but if you have local meetups, if you have just really anything, please, please, please let us know. We are happy to promote it. I know I should have information for a meetup here next week, but I'm not in charge of it this month, so I have no idea what's going on.
It's the risk of not being in charge of things. You just don't know what's up.
Yeah, I've got to go out of town, so I'm leaving Ben in charge. I'm a little afraid.
I would be.
Yeah.
Ben's a good guy. So tonight, usually we'd have Thorin here for this. He has not shown up yet, bastard. We didn't really decide on a toasty this week, so I'm going to go ahead and hijack it again. And just because she has been a huge support for Matthew and has been a good friend, even, I mean, in the brief time you got to meet her here and when you were over in Seattle. And I see great things for this person coming down the line. She's becoming a mom, and I can't wait to see what she does with heathenry. I want to toast Autumn tonight. She is Matthew's wife. It is her birthday. They are at a anime convention in the SeaTac area, and I just want to say happy birthday to her and wish them all the best for this year.
Happy birthday. And I will say this while we're at it, Shauna Jones that we had on last week, her birthday was yesterday, so not toasting her, but I do want to wish her a happy birthday because yeah, she's one of my favorite people and podcasters, and I'm really looking forward to seeing her next weekend. Or this, yeah, like less than a week. I'm so excited.
What are you drinking, Lauren?
I am drinking the last of my Angry Orchard apple ginger, and probably after this, I'm going to switch to something else. I'm going to go to the liquor store this week because I need to stock up for my trip. But they've gotten some new stuff in, but I'm going to fit it. My husband bought it for me, so I like it. Nothing special, but it's good.
Well, I mean, Angry Orchard makes a pretty passable cider.
Yeah, now I do want to talk about this. I don't have it with me because they only have it on draft, but our local brewery here, Stone's Throw. Is that right? No, that's not it. Anyway, one of our local breweries here put out their first cider, and it is amazing. And I'm just like, Stone's Throw Brewery here in Little Rock, and it's amazing. I'm like super, and it's really hard to find a good cider because they're either super sweet or super dry. Like I had a Magners a couple weeks ago that made me pucker. So I had one of those on tap at our pub meet last weekend, and it was phenomenal. And really enjoyed it, and really happy to see some good like craft non-beer brewing coming from Arkansas.
Nice.
Maybe I can go get a growler for my trip. We'll have to see.
Always worth the effort. I am drinking Base Camp Brewing's S'more Stout. Comes in a really nifty little aluminum bottle. But it is supposedly a s'more-flavored stout. And I'm not getting a lot of marshmallow, really not getting a lot of chocolate. It's kind of malty, so I guess there's some graham cracker in there a little bit. But it's a decent stout. It just doesn't taste like s'mores.
Yeah, that
I don't know how you get marshmallow flavor into a beer, and since our brewer is not here yet, I can't ask.
I mean, the only way I could think that you could do it is to use the actual like herb, but
mallow, yeah.
That's literally that or just sugar, because I mean that's really all marshmallows are sugar. So much sugar.
If you put too much sugar in a beer, it ruins it.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Absolutely.
So we're talking about a pretty heady subject.
Yes.
And it promises to either be really interesting or really dull. So, tonight we are talking about, we're going to hit baggage again. We're going to take a little bit of a different tack than we did on the last one. We are going to cover cultural, emotional, and other forms of baggage. We're going to cover a little bit of worldview, and we're going to cover what makes something baggage. Not necessarily examples like I tend to do. We were discussing this before the show. I tend to take an example and try and extrapolate from there, and that presents its own weaknesses when it comes to discussing a subject like this, we're going to take more of an academic approach. Just none of us are academics, so don't hold us too tightly to that.
I may not be an academic, but I play one on the podcast today.
So, why don't you kick us off, Lauren?
So
Start us down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, so I want to kind of start us off all on the same footing. So let's start with baggage and what baggage is and like what worldview is. Because I think if we don't define what we're talking about, we're kind of like, I don't know, we're just circles, because that is when I talk about baggage or I talk about those things, it is super, super hard sometimes to get people to have a conversation because you're all talking about different things. So the first thing is there's two types of baggage that we're going to be kind of approaching here. One is cultural baggage, and that is a tendency for one's culture to pervade thinking, speech, and behavior without you really being aware of it. Emotional baggage is kind of more unresolved issues from your past. It's, think about like you're carrying around all the trauma, disappointments, wrongs, basically all of the things that have happened to you that have affected you negatively. You're carrying those around. And the emotional baggage is seen as pretty negative. But cultural baggage, I would say for the most part, cultural baggage is pretty neutral. We all have it.
It depends on the approach as far as that goes. Because when I was doing my research for the show, I found that when cultural baggage comes up, at least from the sources I saw, it tends to revolve around marginalized peoples.
Right.
One of the articles I read was written by a man who was talking about how he is constantly told to set aside his baggage as a black man by white people.
Right.
And he was saying that, you know, they've got this cultural baggage of the history of being black in this country, and it's not something they can just set aside, but it's something that white people or non-marginalized people seem to just want them to get over. And so it really depends on where you're coming at from the baggage perspective.
Well, I was just thinking just purely in terms of kind of just from an academic perspective. Baggage is of the two, baggage is more neutral than emotional baggage. Cultural, emotional baggage, cultural baggage doesn't necessarily have anything to do with trauma, negative experiences. You can have cultural baggage and never have had like a huge negative experience in your life.
Right. And that's kind of what that's where we want to take the conversation tonight.
Right. So worldview is a little more complicated. It's kind of the set of beliefs that you have about reality that really influence, how you perceive the world, how you think, what you know, and what you do. And that includes, I put a big long list on here in our show notes, but, and I'm probably going to write something up about this week, but, pretty much that includes like your beliefs about nature, about knowledge, about the ultimate reality, origins of man, origins of life, meaning and purpose, the existence and nature of the divine, your belief about the purpose of man in general, and beliefs about your values, what's good and what's evil. And I apologize, I'm going to totally butcher this, but I kind of wanted to tie this back into, there's actually a Germanic concept. It was kind of popularized by Freud, but it predates him. And it's called Weltanschauung, which is kind of a comprehensive philosophy of life. It is this pervasive philosophy that can answer like any question. And I think that that's an interesting thing, because I think for me, I don't know about you, Josh, but for me, that's kind of one of my goals in life, is to build a worldview that is comprehensive, a heathen worldview that is so comprehensive I can apply it to anything.
Well, and I think that's the ultimate goal when it comes to not just heathenry, but really any religious group or movement, is you're looking for something that answer.
You're gonna have to get up closer to your microphone, Josh.
You're looking for something that answers pretty much any question you can come up with in a way that is consistent with your religion, right? And heathens, for the most part, we tend to be a little skeptical of something, we tend to have these ideas of how things work. And I think we are working towards a worldview that has answers built into it, that we can approach subjects and be like, well, from heathen worldview, this is the answer. I'm not sure we're 100% there yet.
No. But we'll get there. And I think that's the important thing, is getting there. Now, I found the part of the problem with doing like research on worldview is it's very, very hard to find non-Christian apologetics or even Christian sources. And part of that is the fact that there is a lot of focus right now on developing worldview in Christianity. And there's also, a majority of our philosophy and research and everything else was done by Christians.
Yeah. Well, and lest we forget, the Western world for the last 1,000 years has been predominantly Christian.
Right.
That's the world we live in. And so while they're working on formalizing the worldview concept and apologetics, only because they've come under fire by the skeptical
sector
of the modern world, that they're having to do that. Heathenry is in a unique position where we're having to actually work from the other way around. We have not had a heathen worldview in the world since when did Estonia convert? Like 12 something? And so we're having to look at what was and build something into what is.
I think that's important to remember as we are. And oddly enough, when it comes to this particular worldview building, probably the one source that we have right now that is probably the closest in their building, like the closest in their trying to do this, is oddly enough people who are trying to promote an environmentalist worldview. And agree, disagree, whatever, it's interesting how much, like, most of the good research I got that wasn't Christian oriented came from environmentalists. So take that as you will. There is a pretty decent quote I got from from an apologetics book, but I really like it. It's written by a guy named James W. Sire of The Universe Next Door. He's a Mennonite researcher. Worldview is a commitment, a fundamental orientation of the heart that can be expressed as a story or a set of presumptions which may be true, partially true, or entirely false, which we hold consciously or subconsciously, consistently or inconsistently. And it's about the basic construction of reality that provides the foundation on which we live, move, and have our being.
I would say that's a fairly accurate description of worldview. It's so moving beyond what a worldview is, right?
Right.
When we start looking at building a heathen worldview, which is the hardest part of being heathen, you have to change the way you think, right? That's when we start getting into like cultural baggage, emotional baggage, and religious baggage, and all these permeating realities in our lives that we're having to critically examine. And for me, I think the biggest piece of that is being able to look at your beliefs and your preconceptions and figure out which ones are vital, which ones you can't set aside, and which ones must be set aside.
And I think that's important. I think that one of the things that you can really do with that is, like, to me, is looking at, like, how is worldview obtained? Like, how did I get this worldview? Because I think that there's something to be said about, okay, if I am being, if worldview comes from socialization, from the media, from education, from your family, from community. Okay, how do I use this in my favor to leverage the growth of a heathen worldview?
So the way you build worldview, the way you change and address the baggage of your life, right, is through action. You have to consciously choose. You can raise people in a worldview. Not all of us were raised in Christian worldview that we all grew up with. Every single one of us. Even if you grew up atheist, sorry, you grew up Christian. But through conscious action, through conscious choice, and the ability to step outside of where we exist and look at what's going on and say, is this consistent with you?
Well, and I would even say that, we talk about, I know that we beat the dead horse of finding a community, but I mean, I would say that no matter what your worldview is, 90% of it comes from either education or socialization. And if you're not socializing with, socialization teaches us how to behave. It teaches us how to act. And if you're not regularly interacting with people who have what you want, to steal a phrase from 12-step language, you're not really learning. And you've got to have that social, and I know that there are people out there who are going to argue with me on this. I don't think you can pick up worldview just from a book.
Well, so there are people who are going to say, right? And there are going to be people who are very much into all you have to do is read this book and it'll teach you how to be a heathen. But, I mean, I've read plenty of books on. I've read most of the Star Wars extended universe. That doesn't make me a fucking Jedi. You can't pick something up from a book. You have to put what you're learning into action. It's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Like, knowledge is knowing that tomatoes is fruit, wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad. You can know what a worldview is without putting it into action.
And that's like very true. And I think it's important to remember, we've got to, it's more than, education. It's, and I don't want to go on beating this dead horse because we beat this one a lot, but man, I'm going to ask, this is like a serious question I ask myself. So I don't feel bad like saying it because it's something that I have personally kind of have dealt with. How much is being a heathen really worth to you? Is being a heathen worth whatever sacrifice it takes to go be with that group that's an hour away or 2 hours away or 6 hours away? How much does being heathen really mean? Does your growth and being heathen really mean? I mean, how far did you go for your event this weekend?
I don't know the exact miles. It was
Give me a time.
Half-hour bus ride.
How long?
It was Seattle to Portland, 3.5 hours.
Okay. Next weekend I'm driving like 5.5 hours. It is the question of how important is your heathenry to you. And I can't decide that. Josh can't decide that for you. Thorin, I'm going to speak for Thorin, but Thorin could probably decide it for you, but that's just Thorin. But at the end of the day, you have to, and people are, guys, I get a lot of feedback. Oh, I can't. But guys, I'm a visually impaired full-time college student. I work pretty much full-time. I do this podcast. I run a Kindred, and I still make time for this stuff. I don't drive. So I really feel like, if I can do it, anybody can. And, there's really just not a whole lot of excuses. But that's just me. But yeah, I mean, that's a big thing. Socialization, cues from the overculture are another big one with your media, your education. I mean, how you develop those values are definitely going to come into play from what education have you had? What other, education, what do you expose yourself to? Media wise, are you, if you're only reading and knowledge and education about heathenry comes from watching the Vikings,
I mean, anyone who will tell you the Vikings go.
I can't hear you at all, Josh.
Can you hear me now?
Better.
Sorry. My headset is possibly on the fritz.
Okay.
You're not going to pick up worldview from an outside book. It's something you have to build through putting off your baggage, right? It's just the way it is. So, let's move on to baggage. Let's talk about what constitutes cultural baggage. Let's talk about how you can identify it and what you do to work through it.
Let me touch on one more thing, just real quickly about worldview before we move on. About why is this even important? Why is worldview so important? Why do we beat this? Why have we done 2 shows about this now?
Go ahead.
I was going to let you share. And really, worldview is what holds together a group. Those shared values and worldviews that held in common hold together a group more than quaint customs or having that shared worldview is much more likely to hold us together as a movement than if we all wear hammers or we all, I don't know, dress like Vikings. The worldview is really what cements together a culture. And that's why we harp on it so much, or at least I do.
Worldview is important for a lot of reasons. It's not just about what binds a group together. It's an internal narrative. And so for a lot of people, for most heathens, we weren't raised in, right? There are a few who were, but for most of us, we weren't. So we have to build this internal narrative to our world so that we can make sense of it from a heathen perspective. And
I don't know what you just did, but that mic is perfect right there. Don't move.
Well, I don't. Okay.
I'm playing with you, but yeah.
Bear with me just 1 second here, Lauren. I gotta do a thing.
Okay.
Talk for a couple of minutes. I'll be right back.
Okay. So I'm gonna dive into kind of like analyzing worldview and how to find baggage. And Josh is just gonna have to jump in when he gets here. We talked about how worldview, how people get worldview and why it's important, but how do I identify what my current worldview is? And there's a lot of different criteria, lots of theories, but I'm going to go with the metaphilosophical criteria for worldview comparison. It was a study done by Clement Vidal and Center Leo Apostle, who are French researchers. So you want to, there's questions you want to ask yourself. You want to ask yourself, what is? What is the meaning of existence? Why are we here? You want to ask yourself, where does it all come from? What do I really firmly believe is the origin of the universe? Where is the world going? Where is existence going? What is good and what is evil? How should we act? What should our actions be? What should guide our actions? And then what is true and what is false? And really looking at those questions, it's a good starting point to help you figure out what you really believe. What is your worldview? because then you can write that down. And and I did this week. I wrote down I'm not going to share my answers because, quite frankly, those are kind of personal. That's something I wouldn't share with most of you. I share it with pretty much my kindred, and that's it. But I'm going to break down the second one. Where does it all come from? And I'm going to use the Norse mythology, like literal interpretation of Norse mythology. So where does it all come from? Well, let's say that I firmly and totally believe, because there are people who do, that, we came from a giant cow, and that Odin and Vili and Ve created us from the Ask and Imbla trees. So let's just go there, because that actually was a discussion this week on one of the Facebook groups I'm on. So if I genuinely believe that the origin of humans is Odin and his brothers created us, so I take that and I think a little bit deeper, and I think why do I feel that way? What evidence do I use to support that? Am I taking it on kind of blind faith from the Eddas? Am I being am I doing other things? Why am I believing this? And examining that evidence really helps you pull out some baggage. So let's say that I believe it because it's in the Eddas. All right. So I believe it because it's in the Eddas. So if it's in the Eddas, then I have a belief of the Eddas being a divinely inspired document. Well, does that really follow with the heathen worldview, or is that baggage from being raised in a religion such as Christianity or Islam or countless other ones where there is a divinely revealed text? Well, maybe my idea about where it all comes from isn't really very heathen, because I'm really relying on old kind of Christian ideas. The idea of a divinely inspired sacred text. But, that's kind of my take on it, of how you kind of start breaking that down. And I'm not sure if Josh is back.
I am back. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what was going on, but the idea of finding the entire text, it's really old, right? It goes back to essentially the first guy who decided to sit down and write something and say, well, this guy told me to write it. The issue comes in that it's not really, when you start looking at heathen books, you're getting outside of what is normally considered acceptable in the worldview. We have concepts such as finding the runes, but we don't have concepts such as Odin saying, "Thou shalt not kill unless you're on a longship." It's just kind of a way. It comes down to that whole reconstruction thing, right? So when we're talking worldview, we're talking baggage. We're using not just the self-examination, but we're using a comparative method to compare what is commonly accepted now to what was then, and figure out how best to adapt what was to the world we're in.
Right, and I think that it comes down to how you really determine what is baggage is examining what you believe and then holding it up to what we know.
Yeah.
I mean, there are things that I have believed as a heathen that, as I've learned more and grown, I've realized are not heathen. I mean, there's really no other way to make sense to say it. They're not heathen. And so my worldview has had to really grow, adapt, and change.
Yeah, well, and that's the trick, right? And that's why one of the pushes towards the cultural baggage topic was, in order for your heathen worldview to grow and change as it should, right? As we said multiple times last season, as I'm sure we will say multiple times in the future, if you're not embarrassed by the heathenry you were practicing 5 years ago, you're probably not practicing you know. So you have to be able to adapt, change, and grow as you learn. I didn't have a house for 5 years. Now I have just the way we change and grow and become better at what we are.
And I think that is, like I said, that's the importance of education in this. And also to recognize, probably one of the really great books that I have found has really helped me. And granted, this is just my own personal stuff. The thing that's really helped me has been reading things like the early Christianization of Germany. Oh God, I can't remember the name of that book.
Good book.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about. Good book.
Yeah, and because it's really interesting to kind of compare in, okay, especially when you're reading lore and you're reading, God, there's so much baggage in lore that sometimes it's hard to dig through. And
so let's talk about modern baggage. Let's talk about how you go about finding it, because the definition is literally the things that you do and think without realizing why you do and think them.
Right.
So for most Americans, right, we have this ingrained identity built around democracy. We don't even think about it. We don't think about why it's so important. So you see a lot of heathen groups run around this democratic foundation because that is a natural way for Americans to do things.
Right.
That's cultural baggage. Whether it should be set aside or not is a different topic, but because it's something we do without thinking, it counts as baggage.
I think another kind of cultural baggage that that a lot of new heathens get, and I'm sorry if you come into heathenry, unless it's been in the past 2 years, if you didn't come into heathenry with an idea that you needed to belong to some god or goddess, or some god or goddess called you, or you needed as it was called a full true or patron deity, you're lying. Because I think just about every heathen I know at some point in time has bought into that. And that is definitely a tide over from the expectation of Judeo-Christian religions, where you were supposed to have this one-on-one BFF personal relationship with your deity. And that's not something that you are going to find in heathenry. That's one of the big kind of arguments I get into with people about what is and what isn't heathen. But that's definitely something that's expected. I mean, you can't throw a stick without hearing somebody around me talking about their personal relationship with Jesus Christ. So you extrapolate from your experiences, well, maybe I'm supposed to have a personal relationship with Odin or Freya or Frey or whoever.
Well, so the idea of being full trui or having that patron deity, you're right, that is cultural baggage. It's something that comes from the fact that we all grow up expecting a personal relationship with a deity. And so instead of taking a heathen approach and having your ancestors, the wife, and I'll even go with Mark on this. I like the idea, and there's evidence to back it up. Having a house god, a god that is part of your home, part of your house cult, that's different than having a personal relationship with the divine. Right? You're not going to come hold your hand while you go to your neighbor's quinceañera. It's just not going to happen. But you can develop that gifting cycle, that relationship that way with the different faces of the divine. Whether it's the ancestor, the light, the god, what have you.
And that's important to remember. It's not like this dead cold relationship where there's really nothing going on. I mean, there is a lot going on. You're just not getting the BFF experience that I was raised to think that if you didn't have, there was something wrong with you.
I've seen that around, and that's one of the reasons we all have that little piece of special snowflake in us that we have to quash and realize that just a dude from the Pacific Northwest, and I maybe talk on the internet. That's all I am. I'm not that. I'm just a guy.
And I'm going to bring up another piece of baggage that is probably another incredibly pervasive one, and it's one that I know we've talked about, but I definitely think will be like a good one to bring up because we do have a post on this from our friend Ailglad from his blog, but talking about the kinship and false kinship. Saying, calling someone brother or sister because you both happen to be heathen. And that, but you know what? If you look at the predominant religions, Christianity, Islam, that's totally not just normal, but expected. Like, there is this definite expectation that someone who shares your faith, it's prescribed in Christianity.
But in America, it goes beyond just religion.
Right.
I have seen this with people I've worked for. I have guaranteed other people have, where you are supposed to feel a kinship for those around you who share something with you. I work for a Fortune 500 company right now. They would very much like for me to feel a kinship with everyone who works for us. There's over 1,000 employees at my company. I don't care who you are if you work for the company and you work in Florida. The only people I really care about that I work with are the 6 that sit near me. That's it. If you were a heathen, that's fantastic. I appreciate the fact that you and I share some basic religious things. I don't care. You are just another person. However, the people that I break bread with, the people that I'm owed to, people that I'm friends with, that I interact with, commonly, those people I care about. I care about our fans because, well, they're our fans and they're the reason we're here, but it's not the same. I'm never going to call a fan brother, depending on who the fan is. One of my bridesmaids fan and stuff. But that's beside the point. There's levels of obligation, there's circles of obligation. And when it comes to this baggage of everyone is brother, then the only ones who can claim that are within this inner circle of obligation. Otherwise, just a person.
And that's important because I don't want obligation to every single heathen out there. That's too much work. The level of obligation I have now is enough, and I want. It's this strange thing that I want to see heathenry grow, but at the same time, I don't want to be in that intimate level with everyone. I just don't.
So, and that's one of those. There's another perfect example, and I love examples. I apologize to the audience for all the examples. Another perfect example of cultural baggage is this idea that heathenry needs to grow as a monolith, as one thing, right? Well, you have national organizations like the Trove, PAC, even the AFA. They're working at building a singular worldview within their organization that is a monolith or author or heathenry, depending on what the organization claims. That of itself is cultural baggage. Heathenry is a regional and a group religion. That's what it is. It's all it's ever been. Yes, there were, you have the state level religion, but it was different than the community level religion. It's a different level.
I will argue that I don't think the Troth is definitely in that as far as trying to create a monolithic, because I guess because I've been a Troth member so long that's not possible. They would argue too much.
Makes me think that
They can't even decide on like pronunciation. There's never going to be a monolithic belief in the truth.
the only thing that makes me think that that's what they're attempting to do is they do have a single clergy program. So if you want to be pro-clergy, you have to go through the pro-clergy program, which means all of their clergy is trained to think alike. A growth member who goes through the clergy program on the East Coast is going to have the same training as one who goes through the program on the West Coast. And so you're setting up a monolithic system for clergy, and frankly, that's just not needed.
And once again, I'm going to have to disagree with you on how that works, mainly because their training is not as much theological as it is logistical. But that's an argument for another day. I have to defend it for one of the big reasons is Rod Landreth, my dear friend that passed away last year, was so monumental in creating it. So it's a little bit different.
The truth is its own thing, right? The truth can do what the truth does.
Right. But I'm just saying, I think you're misrepresenting their program.
Fair enough. I only did the stuff.
Yeah, because I've talked with a lot of people about it because of my desire to eventually get my chaplaincy. It requires an ordination of some sort before I can get in the program. So I've actually looked into it pretty extensively. So anyway, regardless, but yeah, but there's an overculture thing right there. The fact that to get into a non-denominational, religiously agnostic, chaplaincy program, I have to have an ordination and recommendation from an established religious body.
Well, and that leads to that feeds back into that idea of getting that recognition, right? And I don't think this can be argued. All national organizations that exist as political bodies, they're there to get us.
I'm sorry, Josh, I could not hear you.
All national organizations exist as political bodies. They are there to get us recognition within the greater world, right?
Yeah.
So we're essentially by creating national orgs like CAT, GROWTH, BFA, the AAA, not the insurance agency, but the American Officer Alliance, it is caving to the overculture in a way that sets us up to where we have to back them. Because I can tell you right now, I know heathens who are members of the Troth. I know heathens who are members of the AFA. I know heathens who are members of the American Officer Alliance. And yet, none of us do things the same way. Even within my own group, we all approach things just a little different.
Well, and that's all fine and good, but I think sometimes, sometimes we're a small religion, and we're a small religious movement. Sometimes we have to play by the big boys' rules. It sucks, but for instance, sometimes we have to play by the overculture's rules, because if we don't, we end up in this place where we're trying to swim upstream and it's completely useless. I mean, I know that, if I want, if my kindred wanted to buy land, we're going to have to incorporate into a nonprofit organization. Do I really want to do it? No, it's a ton of paperwork, and it's not terribly the idea of incorporating in state recognition is not something that I necessarily find to be terribly within my heathen worldview, but, I'm going to say the overculture, the government, the way our society is structured, there are just some things that you just kind of have to give into, whether you like it or not.
Well, so that brings me to my second point, though. When it comes to cultural baggage, and even when it comes to emotional baggage, there are some things that may not jive with heathen worldview that cannot set aside. If you wanted to actually look at the Archean, or as Mark calls them, Archean worldview, there's a place for slavery.
Yeah.
That doesn't work in the modern world, and it shouldn't work in the modern world. Thus, it is something we have to set aside. Something we have to say, okay, I understand where they were coming from in their world. I live in this world. I need to make this heathenry work. And that means no slave.
No human sacrifice.
Well, let's not get crazy.
No. But yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. We have, I mean, there's even, I mean, if you live in certain areas, I mean, theoretically, I can't have a bloat in my backyard because it is against the law in the city in which I live to kill animals in the city limits, which I think is stupid. We can keep chickens, but we can't kill them. So so the choice is, okay, well, if we're going to have bloat, then if we're going to kill the animal, we have to do it. We either have to risk breaking the law, which, to be honest, I don't think anyone would rat me out, or we have to go somewhere else, or just decide, okay, we can't do this.
So that brings up one of the dangers to the question you asked earlier. When you asked what is keeping worth to you, one of our cultural baggages, one of the ones that we have ingrained from that Christian undertone, is the fact that when it comes to religion, you need to be willing to be able to sacrifice everything. That is not the way the heathen views the world.
No.
The heathen puts their people before anything else. And so there needs to be an ability of flexibility to say, okay, let's not run the risk of, getting people locked up by sacrificing a goat in the backyard because it's illegal here. Let's find a place where we can do this within the bounds of our current society.
And I think that is important, to be adaptable, to be able to say, this is, what we got, and this is what we have to work with. So let's work with it, but at the same time, I really feel like kind of the flip side of baggage, there's also this idea that there's definitely this baggage of just showing up is enough in our culture.
Well, there's the idea, and this is one of those things that I personally think is a shame when it comes to the overculture, and the reason you have this idea of showing up is enough, right, is because we automatically assume that everyone has worth, and everyone has value, but value and worth are two very different things. And so when we make the assumption that, oh, well, I showed up and I was a part of things, that means I'm always going to be a part of things, we're assuming that the heathen group is going to view worth the same way the rest of the world does. And for the most part, we don't.
No.
I did not get invited to join my group until I did something that showed that I had worth. I set my schedule aside and accompanied someone who was already a member to an event where they were going by themselves. And that was the catalyst that made the group go, maybe this is someone who wants to be a part of that. And now I have a people. But it took action. And we are our deeds is not some pretty little speech we give. It is literally what you do makes.
And something else, your worth. You really have to. I mean, my kindred brother is, we kind of had a situation with one of my kindred brothers where it was more along the lines of we were courting him because his worth was so exceptional. It was a situation where we wanted him instead of kind of the other way around, where he was pursuing membership, which, either way works. It's going to depend on your culture, whatever. But, he was a man of worth and proved it to us, even not as a member, over and over again. And I adore him for it. And it's very, and it's one of the reasons that he makes such a difference. But yeah, you can't just show up. You've got to be, if I'm going to take the risk, because that's the thing. Another overculture thing that kind of ties in with that is this idea that everyone can join. I don't really know of a better way to say it than that. Anybody can be a part of any group. You get kind of where I'm going with that, Josh?
I do. I mean, it's one of those. So throughout our brief existence in public heathenry, right, we have constantly said that anyone can be heathen. But the one thing that we have always defended was a group's right to refuse membership to someone. The thing we deride is why they choose to not admit some people. Yeah. But the simple fact is not anyone can join my group. Not anyone can join your group. You have to earn the right to be part of my people.
And I think a way to explain it that might make sense to some people is when someone joins and I can only speak to my group. I can't speak to how Josh's group operates or anyone else's. But when somebody joins my kindred, I extend my luck and our luck to them. And it's, to use the phrase worth in more of a colloquial way, is the risk of extending that kind of commodity of our luck worth it? Is this person's actions going to bring good or ill to our kindred? And okay, I'll get shit for this, and I know I'm going to get shit for this. And you know what? Don't care, because I continually get shit for this one. It's not unlike deciding who to marry. You have to look at and say, and you can make these like stupid decisions about who you marry. I've done it. And go just on kind of love and lust and not actually think through and end up married to an alcoholic. And then, but when if you want a successful marriage, you've got to look at more than just love. You've got to look at what can this person contribute to your life? What can, if I marry this person, are we going to be homeless because he's got a gambling problem? Or is he going to work hard at his job to help provide for the family? It's kind of the same way, when I look at somebody to join a kindred, it's like, what do they have to offer me? Are they going to be somebody that if one of our kindred members is sick and needs to go to the hospital, that I can call at 2:00 in the morning and say, hey, I need somebody to go to the hospital with so-and-so? Or is it a situation where this is a person I'm going to have to, not, or is this going to be a person who's going to be flaky and unreliable?
It's one of those things that when you're courting prospective members of any group, whether it's a club, a kindred, place of employment, you are looking at that person's cumulative actions, right? That's what a resume is. You go and apply to a job. That's what goes into the decision making for a lot of groups when they decide whether or not they're going to let you be a member. Is they're looking at what you've done and who you are. They're looking to see if what you do and what you think and say is going to fit within that group.
Oh yeah.
I'm relatively blessed when it comes to political thought. I'm an outlier in my group. I come from an anarchist perspective. I come so far from the left that oftentimes I butt heads with members of my group But because of what I've done, because of what they've done, we work together because we know our ultimate goal is what's best for our people.
And that's, yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, my group is pretty, we're pretty in agreements with most things, just because we have a few things that if you can't accept it, you're not invited. When it comes to, I mean, I have 2 members of my group that are 3 actually who are LBGT, and if you don't want to deal with LBGT people, you are in the wrong group. So that does tend to help us a little, but I see we have a Thorin with us.
Yes.
You do. Yes.
Oh, thank goodness.
Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you, Josh.
You got here just in time for us to talk about shedding baggage and also start taking questions.
All right, then.
So I'm going to talk about a minute because, dang it, I did a lot of research. So give me a minute to talk about the Hegel-dialectical approach of changing worldviews.
Real quick,
Because I didn't, yeah.
I just want to point out to the audience that Lauren has been very excited about the research she has done. She made us all look at her outline, which was very detailed, and I am 100% sure she can almost write a small book on this subject at the moment.
There's going to be a series of blog posts.
See? I'm just saying, the woman went a little crazy this week.
I had a fibromyalgia flare up, and so I was in bed for 2 days. So, I had to have something to do. So anyway, the idea is you kind of start with your thesis. That is your original worldview, over culture, Christianity, whatever. Then you come across these ideas, the antithesis, negation. And that comes from socialization with other heathens, education, studying. And then you're going to come to kind of the crisis point where those 2 worldviews are in such conflict, you have to find another way. So then you're going to look at the synthesis moment where you're going to have these 2 conflicting ideas and you're going to find a way to adopt, to resolve it. Where you're shedding those areas of the old worldview that don't align with kind of what you've learned and adopting new ones that are of benefit to you and to your tribe. And we do that because if we have these antithesis thesis thoughts, it can make us crazy. I believe the technical term is psychological discomfort.
Okay, so wait a second. What causes psychological discomfort?
Not being able to
just a little bit.
Sorry. So not being able to resolve these 2 opposing worldviews.
Okay. Which
Not
brings
being
us
able
into resolving baggage, right? Because
Right.
if we're not able to resolve 2 opposing worldviews, you have to pick one.
Right.
Thorin, do you have an opinion on said subject?
Well, I mean, that's just it's kind of, to a certain extent, it's technical language to describe the obvious. That's really, to me anyway, that's at the heart of shifting your worldview, is understanding the fact that, yes, there are going to be new things that are unfamiliar to you. And sometimes those new things are going to disagree with what you're used to. And you're just going to have to change what you're used to if what you're truly trying to do is conform to the worldview. I read an article just recently that somebody who apparently hates me linked to me to read, that was talking about experience with the gods. And amongst all the other bullshit that was in this article, one of the things that was mentioned was that if a god ever, asks you to do anything that is at odds with your pre-existing ethos or worldview, then it's not a god, and that's entirely backwards. You are going to have to change. That is a fact. There is nobody anywhere in the United States, at least, I can pretty much guarantee you, that is starting when they first find heathenry from a heathen worldview. You're just not.
No.
And yeah, there are going to be things within that worldview that are probably going to be contrary to what you have been raised with or have lived with your entire life. It's to be expected. And some of those things are going to seem like they're not just different, but straight wrong as you're trying to develop the worldview. And it just is what it is.
The most common example of that, right, is the family dynamic. We see it all the time. We've seen it in the sub more times than I count. This idea that because family hurt you, family doesn't count. It will be absolutely wrong to someone who has gone through that to say, family matters. But from a heathen perspective, family is pretty much the end-all be-all.
Well, it is the core of your inner, so.
And then it comes down to your circles of obligation. And, if you're in a situation where your parent is unsafe to your husband and child, who do you have more obligation to? And then it comes into a real quandary. I'm going to ask real quick, do we have, if you have any questions, you can post them live on our YouTube live page. That's at youtube.com/Heathen Talk, which you should know if you're watching this right now live. Otherwise, over in the IRC channel, please give us your questions so that we can answer them about baggage, worldview, shedding worldview, why I felt the need to incessantly research this, whatever, guys. I'm flexible.
So sorry if I'm not exactly having a whole lot of input here. I kind of missed the entire first hour of the episode.
We just basically talked about what baggage was. Like, how do you discover your baggage?
Well, I mean, I'm probably going to be rehashing some stuff that's already been covered, but you discover your baggage by learning the appropriate worldview and looking at where the old worldview and the new worldview clash.
I actually gave like a technical process.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, exactly. It is about taking, but I mean, that's pretty much what it is. It's all about questioning these kind of important questions and then seeing. The example I used was talking about creation. And I used the example, what if you're a hard line Odin, Vili, and Ve created just from branches, from driftwood, depending on which translation. Okay, why do I believe that? Well, if I believe that because I believe there's a holy book, then that's definitely a baggage issue. Which I've opined about this by myself, so if you have any input on that one, I'd love it.
I want to point out that, and this is based on a book that I know Toby has had his Brawl read, one that I've read, I'm sure Thorin has read it, the idea of. The book presents the idea that there is truth and there is fact. If Suna were to die tomorrow, then instead of the sun rising in the morning, you would have a giant ball of gas rising. There's fact, which is the world is a physical thing that exists on this plane. And then there's the truth that the sun is the goddess. That is the heathen way to look at it.
Yeah. But mainly I was just trying to get to the whole holy book thing. Means to an end and all that.
I hate talking about holy books. I think it's the dumbest thing in the world. So like, the Eddas are the inspired word of them. No, they're fucking stories and myths that people told to each other to entertain one another during the long, cold, harsh winters that they grew up in.
Well, but here's the thing, though.
I live in Cascadia, and I don't have long, cold, harsh winters.
But here's the thing.
About it.
But
I would say they're long.
But that's baggage. That is an issue. That's a baggage issue because, I mean, when I was helping out with the chaplain briefing about heathenry and also true for the military, one of the questions that was asked is, do you have a holy book? What is your holy book? That's an assumption made by the overculture. That's how you decide what's a religion. You have a holy book. You have this, that, and the other. So the idea that the Eddas or the Havamal or culture of the Teutons or, your brother Jim Bob's journal is a holy book is definitely an overculture concept that bleeds in, especially with new heathens.
Well, that brings me to another item of trying to find your baggage. Is that I said earlier that one of those two ways is take your new worldview and your old worldview and stick them up next to each other and see what's different. Is sometimes what you're looking for is assumptions that have no base any longer. The idea, we have books, obviously. And I'm not just talking about academic works, like Culture of the Teutons or things like that, but things like the Elder Edda or specifically the Havamal and stuff like that. Yes, we have books. Other of the major religions that people used to, the overculture religions, if you will, their books are specifically divinely inspired holy books. They are, it is in their theology that they are. Sometimes it's in the very wording of the book that they are. So it's taken as a major idea that, yes, these are holy books. And people will transfer that off onto things like the Havamal because they expect a holy book. But there's a place where you're looking for baggage again. Where are you getting the expectation that we have a holy book? You're not getting it from anything in heathenry. You're getting it from Christianity. You're getting it from Islam and Judaism. But you're not getting it from heathenry. So sometimes what you need to look for, not so much is the things that are different, but just look for the lack of evidence for.
I think that is important. It's important for us to look at these things and recognize. I think it's important, even if you don't necessarily you don't feel like you necessarily have the full heathen worldview, it's still important to examine. Even though I'm pretty sure my heathen worldview is pretty good, it's still important for me to continue. It's important for me to continue to examine what I believe. Why do I believe it? You got to keep doing it.
Yeah, well, I'd argue that I don't think anybody at this point in our history does have a full heathen worldview.
No.
Not a single person. And at some point, just about anybody, if they were to dig deep enough and look hard enough, can find something. They can find a place where they've made one of those assumptions because there was what they perceive as a blank spot. They are expecting something to be there. Our brains are wired to do this thing. I mean, it's part of our very senses, Your vision does that all the time. That's part of the reasons that we can functionally see things. Sorry, Lauren. But yeah, part of the reason we can functionally see things is not because we're legitimately seeing them. It's because our brains are filling in gaps where we expect something to be. There's a huge blind spot in everybody's eyes, and nobody sees it because our brains fill that spot in for us. And when you come up from, your infancy, from when your brain is developing and figuring out how to process the world with certain ideas, then you're going to expect things to be in those slots that society has given you to be filled. And Holy Book's one of those, but that's one of the more obvious and easy ones to eventually recognize. But
I'm trying to put it. That's what the thing is. I'm trying to go with the obvious and easy ones right now because I want people to dig deep in their own. Because I don't know your deep ones, but these are pretty substantial ones. Though I do. Well, Shauna from Across the Hedge chimed in us on our Facebook Live chat that the one holy book may be Abrahamic cultural baggage, but the idea of sacred writing and writing holding power is older and more widespread culturally, and that is true.
Well, that's absolutely true, but I mean, it's the idea of holy book isn't.
Right. I was just reading her.
Yeah.
And I said I want, that's why I said I'm trying to pick kind of like little baby ones because the fact of the matter is I don't know how you were raised. I don't know your experience, especially when it comes to like emotional baggage. So I want you to discover your own. Take a good look, write, journal. I mean, it's super important.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I agree with you that I do want people to discover their own. But on the flip side, I know that the average person's probably going to find 10% of them and miss the other 90.
And that's which is why community.
Right, which is why what you really ought to be doing is, trying to find people who have already been down that road and, stand on the shoulders of giants, as it were, and try to see what they've already discovered.
And we have, and I will say this here, I will say that we are, that we hit on that towards the beginning about you're not going to develop a good worldview without community. It just isn't going to happen.
Yeah, and it's not just about community, it's about community that includes people who have been down that road for a lot longer than you. If you put 10 newbies in a room, they can form community, but it's not necessarily going to form the correct community.
But you know what? If that's what you got, that's what you got. And I have been working on something with a friend of mine, and I'm hoping to kind of get on it after the new year, of the idea of developing mentorships between experienced heathens and people who are less experienced who are trying to start groups. I think that it's super important to have that, because the fact of the matter is not everyone has that available to them locally. It's just not there. I wrote a whole essay about it on the website about how I feel I need someone more experienced to guide me, so I reached out and got a mentor. I think that that's something that is lacking in the community. And I was listening to our friend Alf's podcast this week on mentorship, on Being a Better Man, if you haven't listened to it. And one of the things that he brought up that I just thought was so important is, you can always mentor someone who is less further along than you are. So I may not be able to mentor someone that runs a kindred with 50 people, but I sure as hell could mentor somebody who's trying to start a group. And I don't know, to me, that is a problem that we see, that's just going to be a problem we have to face because we're such a small community, and there are areas without groups or good groups.
And, sorry, go ahead, Josh.
The other thing that I think is sorely missing is introspection.
Oh, yeah.
There seems to be a tendency for new heathen and experienced heathen. You know who you are, you know I'm talking about you, and I know you're listening because you don't like us. I think you got it all figured out. I've only been doing this for the better part of a decade, and I don't have it all figured out. I have friends who've been doing this for 40 years, and they don't have it all figured out. You will never have it all figured out, and unless you are willing to look inside yourself and see what baggage you are carrying with you, you will never make any change.
I think I know who you're referring to, and to a certain extent, I really do see things a little bit from their point of view. Because the point I was about to raise was that while I see the value in the type of mentorship that Lauren is talking about, on the other side, it's really going to be extremely situational and a toss-up of whether or not there's enough value to it. Because, for example, if I were to choose to try to get into something like that and try to mentor somebody, where is the return for me and mine?
Well, have you ever mentored someone?
As a heathen, no, but yes, I have.
I mean, the return on mentorship or doing something like that is the way that you can cement what you really know and what you really believe is trying to teach it to someone else. Whether that's through bringing people into your group through whatever your probationary process is or whatever. The fact of the matter is you have to have some sort of, it's there. I get as much. I mentor outside of heathenry, but I do mentor. I get probably more from mentoring than the people I mentor, because there is as long as you have a good and an expected kind of mentorship process, it's a very reciprocal relationship. You are getting as much as you are giving in a good mentorship, and like I said, I encourage you, if you haven't listened to this week's mentorship episode on being a better man, go do it. Go listen, because Alf has an amazing, I'm not even a man and I love his podcast, but Alf has an amazing podcast this week on that, and I think it's very important. So we have a couple questions from Robin. let's talk a minute about simple guest manners. I can never go to someone's house without a host gift. It feels rude, but my family doesn't really do that, so it makes me the oddball. That's kind of interesting. How do you deal with things like guesting manners with non-heathen friends and family when you want to kind of stay true to your guesting manners, but at the same time they think you're a weirdo?
Well, I mean, is it important whether or not they think you're a weirdo?
Yeah, I'm a weirdo anyway. I'm used to it.
I take a different tact on this. The right thing to do is to bring a guest gift. I just spent 3.5 hours on a bus. I came down, I got here, I realized we're having a potluck. I didn't bring anything, so I went to the store and bought something. When I go visit my mother, I bring her a bottle of wine because I know she likes wine. It's not really about an overculture thing or being the odd man out. It's about the fact that you're spending time in someone else's home. And so it is important to make them feel appreciated for that.
And I guess I'm lucky because I'll go into this, that's one of the values that being Southern and being heathen kind of carry. My mom would probably hit me if I didn't bring a host gift to someone if I went to a party or went to someone's house like that. My mom, that's something I was so ingrained in me that it's kind of the opposite here. But I can definitely see growing up in a culture where that's not the norm, it being awkward. And sometimes you just have to be okay with it being awkward because you believe differently.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, I mean, it's unless you're in some really weird position where you're actually hurting people by bringing a guest gift, then I wouldn't worry too much about it. And that would be a really weird situation.
I find it interesting that you guys call it a guest gift and I call it a host gift because it's a gift for the host. So we call it a host gift down here. A guest gift to me...
The guest giving gift.
Because to me, a guest gift would be like a party favor. It would be something the guest gives. It's a weird kind of language semantics thing I find fascinating. Any more questions from the chat or from IRC? We did have a couple of points brought up that I kind of want to touch on. This are the questions, but Dognose brought up a question about maybe I see it as Christians just picked up stuff from all of their beliefs they tried to wipe from history. I don't know. I think that there's some to that and some not, but that's kind of like assimilation of cultures.
Yeah, that's just sort of a natural thing. I mean, for the most part, with probably a few exceptions here and there was not a group of sinister men sitting in a room deciding what they were going to try to steal and appropriate. It was when you try to convert an entire region that has an entirely different cultural and worldview from yours, some of that's going to bleed in, and then a lot of that's going to stick over time.
Really great book on this that I really haven't been enjoying is Women in Old Norse Society. Because there's a lot of discussion about they kind of couch it in terms of the changes in marriage during the conversion period, but really the priests in that era in the conversion period were given a lot of leeway. As long as it didn't contradict church teachings, they could pretty much keep any other beliefs they had, so long as they didn't contradict church teachings.
I think the Germanization of early medieval Christianity would also be a good one for that topic.
That was just a little more expensive.
It's a little more expensive, but you get what you pay for sometimes.
Yeah, I do want to say that if you can, like, almost any library can get it for you, though. You can interlibrary loan that one. Another thing that I do want to point out, we're talking about books, and I want to plug this. We've talked about A Piece of Horse Liver a lot. It is finally back in print for a reasonable price.
No shit.
Yeah, $25.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I just put that out there.
A copy of that.
Yeah,
I'm going to Amazon right now.
Yeah, so I was like, I'm gonna go pick up a copy of that and take it to get scanned, so I can read it, because that's one I haven't gotten a chance to read yet. So just a little tidbit there that I found when I was looking for something completely. I was updating the some links on the Asatru, the subs wiki today, and it was in the "you might also want to buy" list, and I'm like, holy crap! Sorry, I got a little excited about that, but did want to share because I know it's a book a lot of people have wanted to read.
So,
all right. Well, that'll be in my house on Monday.
If you buy me a copy, I'll pay you back on Friday.
All right, I'll go buy a second one then.
You people and you're getting Amazon stuff so fast. Anyway, we're getting towards the end of the show. Thorin, do you guys have a meetup coming up? Because I don't have that information yet, and you weren't here at the beginning.
In theory, we do. We haven't set a date for it yet,
Okay.
so I'll talk about that next week. I'll shoot the date.
And tune in
And
next week to see Thorin and Josh completely figure out what the hell we're going to talk about while Lauren is away doing fun things.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be fun.
I'm so excited, guys. And then hopefully sometime not this coming week, but the next week, we'll have some video up. I'm going to try to interview Shauna, try to get some more with Brad Selby because his audio was really bad last week. And I don't know, if you are going to Midwest Wintermute and you're a fan, I'm going to be really easy to find. Just come find me and talk to me, and I'll have some Heathen Talk swag to give away. So you definitely want to be there for that. I'm going to have pins.
And real quick, I just want to interject here for a couple of seconds. After this week, my travel options have dried up due to the fact that, I'm poor and work is work. So I will be at home and doing things, so expect things to happen.
Episodes on Sundays, blog posts during the week, so keep checking. I mean, there's, I've put up a new blog post almost every week for the past, month?
Just
so
about.
There is stuff going on the Heathen Talk website, so go check it out. Go read my blog post, argue with me. I'm going to be honest, I think my last was incredibly humbling, and I think a lot of people need to read it because it's all about I need help and I can't do this on my own.
Thorin, you got anything you want to take a minute and talk about?
Not really. I really wish I'd been in here from the beginning for this episode. Unfortunately, real world gets in the way and had to take a car way far away to get it fixed. So I wasn't able to get until the end. I wish I could have been here last week, but, real world again and work and stupid things. But I should be back for an entire episode next week.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we have a big time
I should
left.
be home for an episode next week.
That would be fantastic.
And I'll be in Oklahoma having fun with my friends, guys. So everybody have
For your loss.
You know what? I'm going to tell you, it's Midwest Wintermute. It's the bomb. And my husband's going to go, guys, which is huge because my husband's an atheist and he never goes to Heathen stuff with me. And I've talked him into going under the guise of pretty much everyone's nerdy enough. He'll be fine.
We had an atheist at last year's Cascadia Moot, and he seemed to have a lot of fun. Too much on one night.
Yeah, I think our plan.
Woke me up.
I think the plan is I'm going to make him take Cards Against Humanity and stuff with him. So
maybe you should print out a copy of Cards Against Heathenry.
Oh, if I have time this week.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is 8:31, and I have people and things and a girlfriend who has not had my attention for 90 minutes. Can we please wrap this up?
Yeah, I was waiting on you.
Well, Josh, if you have a girlfriend there who I've met and you're doing pretty good, and she hasn't had your attention for the last 90 minutes, you're doing it wrong.
I'm here talking to the fans of Heathen Talk. I have obligations. Don't give me that shit. I know where you live.
Well, I tried to give him a cue to end the episode, but it didn't work, Lauren.
No, Josh, do I have to
You yelled at me last time I ended the episode first. You guys have to start it.
Oh, God. Thorin, please.
You're doing it wrong.
Well, y'all are not the fucking boss of me.
Oh, everybody have a good week.
Good night, everybody.